I wasn't totally sure what to expect from this year's Craft and Quilt Fair, but it was a lot quieter than normal. Where was everyone? So let's deep dive. What worked, what didn't work, and if it's actually worth going to anymore. Hey, I'm Emma and welcome back to Woodvale Lane. Usually I talk about all things crochet and Sydney crafting events. So let's jump into this year's Craft and Quilt Fair. So you might be wondering, what is the Craft and Quilt Fair? It's pretty much what it says on the tin. The fair is all about crafting and has a huge focus on quilting. It's held in June every single year at the ICC in Sydney. There are also Craft and Quilt Fairs in Melbourne and Brisbane. So I really love the ICC as a place for conventions. It's super easy to get to via the train or the light rail. And it's located in Darling Harbour, so you know that it has a good view. I went on Sunday the 29th, which might have been why it was so quiet. Sunday was the last day that the Craft and Quilt Fair was held. Normally it's a 4-day event and it starts on Thursday. Usually I attend on Saturdays and the energy in the room is a lot higher. But this year it was definitely noticeably lower. I also noticed that some of the crafts were missing this year, like normally they would have paper crafts, but couldn't find any. And also there was a noticeable lack of embroidery. Also, where did the cross stitch go? Also, the hall this year felt a lot smaller. I don't know if that was because the hair convention was also on at the same time, so maybe they didn't get a larger space like they had in previous years, but it definitely felt smaller. Even though it did feel smaller, I do think that they made some improvements to how the hall was set up this year though. Like last year, they had the seminar section a bit too in the action, whereas this year they had it off to the side a bit more. So when I was sitting to listen to a seminar, I could actually hear what the presenter was saying. So 10 out of 10, I absolutely loved that change. I also think they've done some general community sort of updates this year as well. So before you even went into the hall, you could take a photo with your bestie or whoever you're going with. I remember last year I had to take a photo with the banner and it just didn't hit the same. There was also a massive welcome board and you could write down why you were there or why you enjoy crafting. And I thought that this was a great touch. I wrote a little note and put it on the board myself. So descending down the escalators, unlike previous years where you would start down the stall aisle, this year we were entering right into a wall of a stall, which I thought was a little bit different and maybe a bit of an odd choice. So we kind of just like walked in and then weren't sure which direction to go from there. Whereas previous years, you just go straight into a stall. So it's really clear that you're going right down an aisle, right into the shopping. Personally, I did find this choice a little bit jarring because it wasn't as obvious as to where to go. Whereas in the previous years, it was very clear that you were just going straight down the aisles, starting your shopping experience. I will say though that there was a really good variety of stalls this year. A lot of quilting supplies, fabrics, tools, yarn, books, and patterns. Ooh, I also saw some antiques and a lot of jewelry supplies like beads. They also had some newer stalls this year that weren't just strictly selling supplies for crafting as well, and I thought that was a great touch. I bought these really cute Hello Kitty earrings from Little Olive Creates, who was in the makerspace, I believe. And honestly, I absolutely love these, they're so cute. So moving on to the workshop spaces. For the featured creators, their workshops were at their booths, which were generally out in the open. The biggest being the Kathy Jack Copeland workshop space. Now, her space actually had a door and chairs and was towards the back of the hall, so it was nice and quiet. The other two featured creators had their stalls towards the food and sort of the front area of the hall. I could imagine it might have been a little bit louder and maybe a little bit too hard to hear on the other days of the fair. There was also a walled off studio workshop space at the back of the hall, and I did an abstract watercolor in that room. It was actually quite comfortable and quiet in that space, and I could hear the instructor quite clearly. At one point, the overhead music came on and I was actually quite vibing in that space. I could hear it quite clearly. I could still hear the instructor. It was a good time all around. If you're interested, I'll be talking more about my experience doing watercolor in my next video. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it. The Cavelcade of Fashion was back again this year with some beautiful hand embroidered pieces. My fave was this soft pink dress with embroidered flowers. It was absolutely stunning. If you've never heard of the Cavelcade of Fashion, it is best described as a museum without walls. They have a massive collection of 18,000 original pieces, but most of us will only get a glimpse of the collection at events like this. I can't exactly remember what they called this collection, but it was Asian influences of fashion. And honestly, every piece they had was absolutely stunning. I cannot believe that somebody hand embroidered all of this stuff. There was definitely a lot of time, care, and craft work put into this stuff, and I can't believe how beautiful they all were. On to the quilts. So the Australian Quilt Show is all the way at the back of the hall. I'm not a quilter by any means, but I absolutely love seeing the talent on display here. This year, the AQC theme or challenge was called On the Map. So the challenge is the quilters must make 90 centimeter squares and then submit them for judging. Some of my favorites this year were Lunar Lights. It's very iconic and Sydney. And then they had this one, which was 3D and called The Lucky Country. I did a poor job of trying to capture the 3D-ness of this quilt. Next was the Melbourne Underground. This really tickled me. I absolutely love trains and train maps. They also had a huge array of other quilts on display. I thought that the Patrol Puff was very creative, and this lava lamp quilt was giving Dave's craft room. And here are some of my other favorites from the show. Let's talk all about the food options. Inside the hall, there was not many options for food. And unfortunately, they don't have pass outs, so you can't leave, get some food and come back. Which is a bit of a bummer because if you're there for a workshop, either morning or afternoon, you'd probably want to go outside for a little bit just to get some fresh air, grab some food and then come back. Especially if you're doing 2 workshops in a row. So in the hall itself, they had a few options. Definitely the usual hot chips. I saw someone with a pie and a sausage roll. There was also a place for high tea. So you could get coffees, teas, cakes, scones, you know, the usual high tea affair. As a girlie with some dietary requirements, I did find it a little bit too hard to find something for myself. So I had to wait until the end of the show after my workshop, and then I went out and got something that I could actually eat. I absolutely loved seeing all of the guilds this year at the fair. I had great chats with the Knitting Guild, Tatters Guild, Spinners, and the Machine Knitters. The Knitters Guild was also manning the knitting lounge, and it was a very cozy, comfy space with some soft lighting, and it definitely felt like a lounge room situation. It was so nice and refreshing. I think that was also new this year because I don't remember seeing it last year. Oh, I also wanted to add that the Knitting Guild isn't just for knitters. If you're a crocheter, you can also go to the Knitting Guild. I know that there is a crochet guild in Australia, but I have not seen them at any of these events yet. I don't know why that might be. Maybe they always have conflicts. I think they're kind of new as well, so I don't think they're maybe as big or have the members to send out to these kinds of shows, but when I see them, I'll let you guys know. Or if you're a bit more interested in knowing about the different types of guilds we have in Australia, let me know and I'll do a deep dive. So after 2 p.m, the fair does get quieter. I finished my workshop at 3:30, and when I walked out, I actually thought the fair was closed because there was no one to be found. Once I realized it was still open for another half hour, I decided, okay, this is my time to do some quick shopping and finish seeing the things that I didn't get to see before I went into my workshop. I swung by the Hatch embroidery stall, and I was so lucky because the nice lady there gave me this beautiful butterfly embroidery from the machine. And here it is. Did you guys know that you don't actually need to have one of those super fancy $20,000 embroidery machines to use the Hatch software? Because I didn't. Apparently you can just use a single needle embroidery machine, and they're about $1,000, which is still expensive, but it's nowhere near as cost prohibitive as the $20,000 multicolor machines. So if you already have a machine, maybe look into the Hatch embroidery software. Maybe they have some cool patterns and something you might want to try. If you need more of a low sensory hour vibe, I would say definitely come in the afternoon on Sundays. It is perfect. It definitely gives that Woolies or Coles low sensory hour, if that makes sense. The lights are still on though, but it just doesn't feel as overwhelming with all of the noise. So, was the show this year mind-blowing? No. But it really delivered. It had the cozy, soft vibes that I wanted. If you're into crafts and quilting, this is definitely the best show of the entire year. Saturday definitely has more high vibes if you want to be a bit more hustle and bustle. Sunday is definitely a lot quieter. And I really did appreciate having a chilled out atmosphere on the Sunday. Let me know in the comments below, did you go to the fair this year or are you thinking about going next year? And stay tuned for my watercolor video. Thanks for watching, like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!